Hello, my name is Nin Lee.
Hello, Luna.
So we're going to start off by introducing yourself, and would you please tell us your name and where you were born?
My name is Dolores Rivas Bahti, and I was born in Tucson, Arizona.
When did you encounter the G family?
I met the G family when my husband and I built this house and were raising our family.
Did you visit them often?
Many times, because their market was around the corner and to the left from our house, and so it was our neighborhood market.
What do you remember about the store? The atmosphere, the food, the actual owners?
I remember that it was very big. It was an adobe market on the corner of Meyer and 17th Street. And it had wooden floors and double doors that went into the store, and there was tile all the way around it, and there were murals of animals behind the butcher counter. And it had Mexican cheese and fresh vegetables and tortillas, and the G children worked behind the counter after school.
So did they market sell Mexican food, or did they sell Mexican and Chinese food?
Well, all kinds of food. They had bread and tortillas and fruits, vegetables, canned goods, a lot of candy for the kids because it was down the street from Carrillo School. So many of the kids came in after school for a snack. And all the basics, milk, cheese, and bread. So that was the good thing, because the people that were in the neighborhood, the kids and the viejitas, could go to have some place to buy their food without having to take the bus or a cab or walk or drive.
Do you have any photos you would like to show us of the market?
I do. Well, I have just a detail of a photo. When I was in graduate school, I took a social documentary photography class, and I had to take some photographs of a particular street. And so I chose Meyer Street between Kennedy and 17th Street, and Jerry's Market was right on the corner. So I took a picture of the market, which I don't have right now, but I do have this picture of the mural that was at Jerry's Market on the side, and you can see this telephone booth right here, and there's some graffiti on the side too. This was taken in about 1985. So this, of course, the market's no longer there. The building is there, but it's now an engineering firm. And the mural was plastered over when it was first renovated. So in some ways, the photograph just records a moment in time when it was really a big part of the neighborhood. And you could see the market that was the Chinese market, and then the Chicano mural on top of it, which is part of your interest now, is how it's connected to our neighborhood and how it fit over time in the neighborhood.
It's a really pretty photo.
Thank you.
Are these some of the pictures or similar pictures that were behind the butcher counter also?
Oh no, these are Chicano representations of pre-Columbian gods with some artistic license. And then the graffiti is definitely improvisational. Well, it was here when we got here, because it was here for a very long time before we got here. It was several generations old. And we know from our work that this is one of the oldest neighborhoods in Tucson. And there was a time in Tucson where there was a market on almost every corner of this part of town. So on Kennedy and Meyer, just one block away, was another Chinese market that wasn't open. But Jerry's Liho Market stayed open for many years.
So can you describe your relationship with the G family? You said that their son went to school with your daughter.
Well, we had a good relationship because we saw each other almost every day. Because it was the neighborhood market. If I forgot something at the supermarket, then I would send the kids down to the market to pick it up. And we had 2 cups in our kitchen cupboard when they were little. One was M for Mark and one was D for Dolores, but we told them that the M stood for money and the D stood for dinero. So they could go into the coffee cups and get money if they needed to go to the market for something.
Oh, that's sweet. I love that.
Well, if we begin in the 80s, which is when I begin to know the neighborhood, an example would be this book, which is a book that my daughter made in 1984. It was the first of a series of oral histories about the neighborhood residents that were conducted by the students of Korea School. And Suiji is in this book because he was a big part of the neighborhood. So if you look at the images, first there's his photograph, and this is the front of the market, and then this is Sui here. And then here's a little oral history that was written by one of the students at Korea School. And we don't have that kind of a relationship with the new owners because their doors aren't open to everybody in the neighborhood. So when the people who planned these books were identifying people that were important to the neighborhood, that they wanted to make sure were interviewed for the project, for the first book of the project, they included Sui because he's such an important part of the children's lives. And they knew him, and so they were comfortable going and interviewing him.
Do you still have contact with the G family?
I did for a couple of years after that, because when he sold his business, he went to work again for the 17th Street Market, which is another place that I shop that's on 17th Street. In the warehouse district, not the one downtown, but the one over between 22nd and Broadway. And so I would see him there intermittently. What is left of the Chinese groceries? Mm-hmm. Well, probably more than I'm aware of, because I know that they began as a really fundamental part of the commercial development of Tucson in the early 20th century, and that they were all over downtown, that they provided the nourishment for most of the city at some point and remained a very strong cultural presence in the neighborhood and still exert an influence as far as the architecture and the traditions and the customs that are observed in the center of town. One that I loved particularly was the hyacinths at New Year's. Do you know that custom?
No, I don't know that custom.
Well, it was in the newspaper when I was doing my research. I read about the different customs that the Chinese had in Tucson, and one was to plant hyacinth bulbs for the new year. And so every once in a while when I went into Jerry's Market, there were hyacinths in bloom. The presence of the markets in the neighborhoods at a time when the neighborhoods were trying to survive, and we had just a few examples of the architecture of Tucson from the early 20th century. Some of the most important buildings that we could cite were built by Chinese people and were Chinese markets. And in this part of town, where Meyer Avenue was one of the most important commercial streets in Tucson's history, it was lined with Chinese markets, which points to the importance, not just in our neighborhoods, but in Tucson, especially around the time of early statehood, when people were coming here to settle. The Chinese markets were where they got the food that helped them grow strong.
Thank you so much for your time. It was an honor to interview you.
You're welcome.